my recent trip to Walmart, man, I found some goodies, man. I found that Town set, like the Ultimate Collector set, that big box. I could not believe I found that in Walmart.
Walmart is a very eclectic place. It's
especially recently.
Yeah, it's like you never know what you're going to find there, and sometimes you can find some real gems, and it really all depends on which Walmart you go to. You know, some are better than others. I know all the ones around me right now have just degenerated their movie section down to barely one aisle of nothingness. No more, big bargain bins that you can just sift through for like an hour. No more like
the
TV
Blu-ray bin was like the shit back in the day. That was my favorite thing was going through the Blu-ray bin. Now they don't even have a Blu-ray bin; it's just a DVD bin, and I don't buy DVDs anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly care about them.
Now the thing they do keep in stock is like old TV shows. That's their best thing. Is like
shockingly, mine don't even do that anymore.
Really?
It's like even some of my Target stores don't even do that anymore. Target stores used to have a pretty decent TV show.
The Targets are looking pretty pathetic now.
Yeah, very bare. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And it really is unfortunate for people like us who like to go out and do a little hunting trip.
Yeah, I was going to say, as we call the hunt.
Yeah, that used to be one of my favorite aspects of collecting, and now it's getting to the point of just continued frustration at nothing.
Yeah.
Initially, we were going to go into our, Academy Award recap because we talked so much about the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
But I'd say right now, since we're talking about the degradation of physical media, I might as well jump into something I discovered recently. And it's going to get a little economic-y, so please bear with me.
Give me the numbers, Andrew. I'm ready.
Give me the numbers. Okay, so there's this website called Digital Entertainment Group, and they had this kind of year-end economic assessment of the year of 2018. 2018 just ended. We're in 2019 now. We're actually in March now, which is kind of crazy to me. But basically, the numbers are like this. So when it comes to kind of all of the purchasing of home entertainment video of last year, whether it be streaming, physical media, rentals, all that kind of stuff, added up to $23.3 billion, which is actually up 11.5% from 2017. So that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
But
what's the bad news, Andrew?
It's not bad news. It's just interesting trending news that we keep bringing up here on the Cinema Discovery Project, is that the subscription streaming services are kind of the big ones. Yeah. Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu being the big kahunas, the big fish in that area. They made up 30% of that entire amount of money.
Wow.
Which was about $12.9 billion. And that's just through streaming service money, just getting that in. But there's also people who bought and rented movies, because sometimes people do that. You can do that on Vudu or Amazon Prime, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. That accounted for another $4.55 billion worth of money. So if you add those two together, you get, over $17 billion of this $23 billion pie, if you will.
Yeah.
And you must say, well, how much did physical media get? 4K, Blu-ray, and all that kind of stuff, TV show sales. That only accounted for $4.03 billion, which is a 14.6% drop from last year.
Wow.
And I bring that up because we've talked about physical media and how it's going downhill. We just talked about, how the stores aren't, stacking the shelves with them anymore. And you're seeing that slowly, take a toll over the overall market of home entertainment. You're seeing the trending switching from physical media to streaming and renting.
Well, well, the thing is, I'm in, I work for Pepsi and I'm in sales, so I kind of understand. There is a little bit of a difference when like for instance, these Targets or these Best Buys that are cutting back in general, because they cut back in general, that means that the overall numbers are going to look less just on that basis.
Right.
Like when a store orders a bunch of movies, they own them movies until they decide to take them back. So the
they
numbers for the
just
year look cushier, even if eventually they have to take back the movies anyway. So when they're not ordering as many movies now, overall, because of the cutbacks, it's looking less.
Right.
So it's been a dramatic change, definitely.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I got this from a friend that I'm on Facebook with who posted it this past week. I just want to give him credit. Robert Meyer Burnett, who has been deep into like the physical media movie collecting since like the 1980s with like Laserdisc and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he's like an old school collector and he knows his stuff. But I did check like the website and check the numbers to make sure, he wasn't just, making things up. And he wasn't. It's all there in a PDF file you can get on their website. And it was just fascinating to see that is what's happening now. And like Stephen and I have said several times, is that we are people who do both. Yeah. We stream as well as buy physical media. Our preference is physical media, but we don't denigrate the streaming game or any of that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of great things about streaming. The obviously convenience factor and specifically with TV shows. TV is such an expensive part of the physical media game that sometimes you don't want to buy it all. And sometimes you want to check it out before you do buy it. So you get on there, jump on there, and the binge watching of it. You can binge watch something, and that's great. But for us, it's not only just that we find that the quality is better. But that there's we like the ownership of it. We like to be able to hold it in our hands. We're becoming old school in that way. It's like people that love vinyl. They like being able to have the artwork and that stuff is part of the experience of having seen the movie.
Yeah, it's very much a source of pride for me that I've mentioned several times. Yeah. It is difficult to collect physical media just because having the space to accommodate it is problematic. Sure. And also...
But that's a choice you make. That's a choice you make as a collector.
Also, and also can be more expensive. Paying... what is interesting is that Netflix just upped their monthly subscription service by $2, but it's still relatively affordable compared to, buying movies individually or buying TV shows individually. I think mine went up couple of dollars as well because I have the middle tier one. There's the higher tier one where you can stream in 4K and you can have like 4 people watching at the same time.
Yeah,
I have the middle one.
Mine went up too, but I don't pay for mine, so.
Oh, hey now.
Oh, I'm not gonna say whose it is. I'm not gonna give away that name.
I know. Coincidentally, Hulu actually went down in price, so I guess they're like trying to balance each other out.
It's Disney's like trying to bring more people in, so that then they can jack the price up.
Oh, what I did hear also what I did just hear recently is that Disney is looking to buy Warner Media's stake in Hulu out. So since they just bought 20th Century Fox, they get all of what 20th Century Fox owned, and 20th Century Fox owned about 40% of Hulu. So Disney, of course, gets all that stuff now.
Yeah.
And now they just want to buy Warner Media's portion of whatever they own of Hulu, I guess, so they can basically own it, more than 50% own it outright. Yeah. Because Warner Media, as we learned, is going to be launching their own streaming service later this year. So they're not going to need a contract with Hulu anymore. They might as well make some money off of it. And Disney is taking over with launching their own service.
And they already got rid of Filmstruck, so,
They did. They're
already cutting dead weight as it is.
That is very true. I still miss it every day. I still haven't deleted the apps off of my media
me either.
stuff.
We only got, another month, a little over a month to before the Criterion channel gets launched?
Yes, Criterion is launching their own streaming service, a la Filmstruck, and it's coming out in April.
And right there is an example of why is something streaming that we do love. I mean, like that right there is a great resource because as we said, we can't get everything we want on physical media. So the Criterion channel can provide us with something that nobody else can. I mean, it's
right.
And even the streaming services that are out there won't provide it for us because it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's not for the mass audience.
It's so a niche audience, as they said in their press release BS nonsense thing, where they like just told us.
We are part of the. We are the little people.
Yeah, I know. They basically told us to go screw ourselves. But that brings us into our next thing that I want to discuss before we get into the overall general topic of this episode. Is we all know Steven Spielberg. Steven, do you know Steven Spielberg?
He is one of my favorite directors. Yes, I love Steven Spielberg.
Would you say he's a well-known person?
He did some movies. He did some movies through the years.
He did. Well, Steven Spielberg, it came out this week, is going to be talking to the Academy Board at their next meeting about excluding Netflix films from being eligible for Academy Awards.
Yeah.
And that is a very interesting concept because right now the Netflix films, I think, are picking up a lot of steam when it comes to award season consideration, specifically with Roma, which won several Oscars at this past year's ceremony, which happened a week ago or so. It won Best Director, it won Best Cinematography, it won Best Foreign Film. It was definitely a critical and award season darling, and Steven Spielberg's seeming rationale behind that is that the Netflix films or the Netflix productions are missing the quote-unquote theatrical experience. And that's such a broad and I think loose term because as long as the Netflix films, follow the qualifications that you need to follow when it comes to being qualified for an Academy Award, they should be eligible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there's a lot of smaller films that get the same release as. I mean, they've been having to follow them qualifications. They have to have at least a limited release. And Roma had a limited release in theaters.
Roma had a longer release than some other, films that were put out.
Think about something like Phantom Thread a couple years ago. That barely was in Silence was barely in theaters. That's I mean, you don't hear Spielberg yelling at Scorsese about his film.
Coincidentally, Scorsese's next film
is a Netflix film. Yeah.
And it's coming out, we heard, right in the awards season window, and it's going to get a theatrical release as well as being released on Netflix. And what I don't think people realized about Roma is that Roma came out in theaters before it was released on Netflix,
and it had a festival run.
Yeah, it had a festival run.
So I saw it in theaters at the festival. So that means it played in theaters. I mean, it's in theaters. Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as it follows those guidelines, I think those films should be eligible. And his other rationale is these are more like TV movies than they are theatrical films. So therefore, they should only be eligible for Emmys, and you would say Golden Globes as well because they have TV show awards, which I think is a load of nonsense. These films that are being made by places like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, they have full film production behind them, full budgets, full crews, full people working behind the scenes. These are movie productions, you know what I mean? And I think we have to, as people, as an audience viewing, as cinephiles, we have to kind of understand that the way of distribution is shifting greatly when it comes to movies, specifically movies that were, just theatrical expositions before. They're now different. And to fight back against it, I don't know if he's doing it to preserve some sense of, traditionalism or some sense of, these movies need to be preserved in some way, being put on some type of pedestal, and I'm like, that's kind of nonsensical to me.
Yeah, I mean, we had a whole episode about this back early on, talking about streaming versus physical and stuff like that. But this is something Spielberg's kind of been bringing up throughout the last couple years, and now it seems he's really just he's had it. He's gonna talk to the board about it, and so see. Look, I'm still going to love Spielberg. I still think he's definitely an advocate for, I can't speak. Can you say it for me?
Advocate.
The devil's advocate. Great movie with Keanu Reeves. But he's definitely pro, I like that he's an old-fashioned guy. I mean, I love people that shoot on film. I love that. I love that he's trying to keep that alive. But he's also he's belittling something just because I think he's maybe scared that
could be.
There's some fear there. I don't think it has any, because I mean, to me, this shouts to me that you're trying to squash the little people. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody should be able to make a movie and it should be able to get to the wide, not everybody should. It's like Ratatouille, Ratatouille. Not everybody should be a cook, but anybody could be a cook.
That is true.
So everybody should be able to have the chance, but it doesn't mean everybody should be able to show their movies on the biggest stage.
Yeah, not every Netflix film is going to be nominated for Oscars or awards.
And that's
it's a select few.
And the way he's reacting to it makes it sound like that's what's happening, and it's not. They pick a few movies that they want to push, just like a studio does. And as long as it's a fucking great movie, then what does it matter? I mean, do I think they should at least be shown in theaters limited wise? Yes. I think if that's the criteria that the Oscars want, is that they want it to have at least a limited run, then I think they should do that. Because I don't think that just because Netflix wants their movies to win awards, that everybody should have to bend to them.
No.
That's the world does that too much. If they have a criteria for becoming a nominee, then they should follow it.
Right.
There's no reason why they shouldn't. They just don't want to spend the money to get into it. They don't want to spend the money to put it in theaters.
Yeah, to me, Netflix is kind of is shifting into another distribution company for a lot of films that are looking for distribution. Well,
and the thing is they want their cake and eat it too. They don't want to have to put their movies in theaters, but they also want to be accepted for Academy Awards.
Yeah,
and that's not what the Academy wants the movies in the theaters, at least for a little bit.
Yeah, there's an extra cost to that they obviously don't want to have to pay, because I don't know if people are aware of this, but Netflix is they're deficit spending when it comes to what their model of economics.
Oh, yeah.
They spend billions and trillions of dollars on production and stuff. They don't make that back.
The thing is for something like the Oscars, they're part of Hollywood, which Hollywood puts most of their movies in theaters, and the theaters need to make money.
Yes.
If they're letting somebody in that doesn't make them money, they don't want them a part of their biggest show of the year.
Oh yeah, money is a huge factor in Hollywood. Which brings us to, I guess we could transition from that now into a little Academy Awards recap.
Yeah. We had this. It's been a week since the Academy Award.
We didn't do an episode last week because we were like, we'll just take a week off.
It's a holiday. It's a film. It's the Academy Awards holiday.
Yeah. We watched it. I watched the whole ceremony, and of course, we voiced our concerns going into it. It was going to be a hostless Oscars, which actually ended up being one of the best aspects of it.
I think that was the best thing about the Oscars this year, was that it moved a lot faster. You didn't have kind of some meandering jokes that just went on way too long. You had a variety of people come on stage, some that were kind of weird to be there.
Yeah.
Like Tom Morello from, Rage Against the Machine was there.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. But we got to talk about one, having no host sped up the time, even though it ended.
It still ended kind of late, but it was definitely like 45 minutes shorter than it usually is.
Oh, yeah. It was at least 15, 20 minutes. Yeah, because it ended 11:15 or so Eastern time.
Yeah.
Eastern time, because we're on the East Coast over here. But it moved quicker. It felt faster. The pacing was better. There was no gimmicky jokes that slowed the thing down. There was no opening monologue. The actual opening monologue was just a quick performance by Queen.
Yeah.
Which I guess was the best way to open the show. I mean, get everybody's energy up.
I mean, that's not bad.
That's not a bad way to start. And then, the awards were handed out pretty quickly, pretty efficiently. There were a lot of people who, once they got up there, they kind of froze. They kind of, deer in the headlight situations. Some people were not as good
on the mic as others.
And I understand. It's literally a world stage. There's millions of people watching. It's a career-defining moment.
It's a live event. Yeah.
It's a live event. You don't really understand.
I think they did have a little bit of a delay, though. I think they said that's what they did just in case. There was a slight delay in case there was something they had to cover up.
Right. Yeah. They always do that. Live sports, live anything now, just in case something happens. Streakers or whatever happens.
Just in case of an Oscar flub at the end where they say the wrong movie.
Or somebody swears and they can bleep it out, which they had to do a couple of times.
Yeah.
They had to do a couple of times. I'm pretty sure a couple of winners they had to bleep out. What else happened? Spike Lee finally got an Oscar for
writing.
Best original screenplay? No, best adapted. It was best adapted. And
we could keep talking about Spike Lee.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. At the end he went a little nutty.
Yeah, he got really upset and he tried to leave. And then
there was some surprises winning. Oh man, Steven.
Dude,
I'm just gonna say this. How did Bohemian Rhapsody win for best editing when it has one of the worst edited sequences in any movie? I keep having conversations with people
about this, and I just.
There's no explanation.
There's no. I don't get it. I mean, I've heard it from other people that the editing. I hear some people like, oh, the editing was cool, and then I hear other people that are like, what the fuck were they thinking? Like me and you. I don't.
No, I'm questioning whether I understand the editing process in movies now. Like, did I miss something?
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple scenes in the movie where I think that it's got some cool editing between when they're recording the songs and then when it goes to the stage, but that's about it.
Yeah, the that's transitions. I'm talking like cutting within the scene.
Yeah, and it's about how editing's about how they tell the story too.
Right.
It's not just about cool transitions. Yeah.
There's the one scene that keeps getting shared on Twitter and social media in general, where it's the scene where they meet Aidan Gillen, the actor Aidan Gillen. They meet his character, who's like a record producer or something like that, or like a manager or something, and when they're just trying to start out as Queen, and it's one of the most over-edited, like there's like a cut to this person, cut to that person, cut to this person, and you're like, there's no need for this at all. It's
obviously
over-edited.
They're covering up something that they didn't get in one shot or two shots.
Maybe they're just trying to get reaction shots from everybody in the band because I guess.
Well, you brought this up too. You brought this up too. The guy that shot most of the movie did not help put it together.
Yeah, there was literally no director in post-production for this.
So they don't know exactly what the intentions were with certain scenes. They just put it together the way they thought it should be put together.
I mean, all props to John Ottman, who's the editor who won the Oscar.
Yeah.
But he had to put this movie together with no one telling him how this movie was supposed to look.
And and I don't even think the guy that took over was available either, because
Dexter Fletcher.
Yeah, he was off doing the Elton John movie.
Yeah, Rocket Man, which is having a big pre-movie release push right now.
I want to see that one. That one looks better.
See it. People are saying that because Elton John came out the other day and said, Taron Egerton is actually singing, not like Rami Malek.
Well, he's already did some live performances.
He has.
Yeah, and he sounds great. He sounds great, yeah.
But, we also had musical performances during the ceremony.
Yeah.
The big one, obviously, being Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper.
The chemistry's there, man. It's real.
People lost their goddamn minds while watching that.
I did. I was losing my goddamn mind. I was sitting there and I was just like, The Shallow.
Yeah. I
was singing with him and I was like, God damn it, Bradley Cooper's so good looking.
He's singing and everything. And Lady Gaga got her Oscar for Best Original Song, which we all knew.
Yeah. She acted like she wasn't going to get it, but she got it.
Yeah, because she literally won it at every other awards, including the Grammys. But still, it's a big moment for her.
Sure. No, it's a big deal.
Congratulations to her. Some other interesting winners.
Olivia Colman.
Olivia Colman was a surprise, although I wanted her to win. I thought she was amazing.
I didn't see The Wife, but I heard Glenn Close was fantastic.
I've seen The Wife, and Glenn Close literally carries that movie herself. Yeah. She's the best part of that movie. She's better than the movie. Her performance is better than the actual movie. But I'm glad to see Olivia Colman win, because The Favorite didn't get much love during the awards ceremony.
It got nominated a lot, but it didn't win anything other than Olivia Colman. Yeah, it got a lot
of nominations. And a movie that got shut out was Vice. Vice didn't win anything,
which is fine with me because I thought the movie was okay. But
yeah, I don't know why that was up for best editing.
Only thing was the best actor award. That was yeah.
Yes, which is a bit of a trending topic while watching the ceremony. Is Bohemian Rhapsody picked up quite a few Oscars, and some of them, like we said, a little head scratching.
They got both sound awards, which
I literally tweeted out. Nobody voting knows what sound mixing or sound editing is.
Yeah.
All they did in their mind probably was like,
it's a movie about music, so the sound's got to be great.
Not only that, but it's like, I like Queen. Queen's music sounds amazing. I guess it's going to sound amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
Check mark. You know what I mean?
That's an easy one.
Rami Malek winning for Best Actor. wasn't a surprise to
No,
me
it's not a
because he's been
surprise, no.
winning pretty regularly throughout all of the award shows.
And he had a great speech. He was really good. I like
I mean, and everybody kind of, we've said our piece about Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
People on the internet have said their piece about Bohemian Rhapsody. The movie is a flawed movie, and I don't really blame Rami Malek for
No.
Getting all these awards. I mean, he went out there and he performed the role that he signed up to perform and all that kind of stuff. But Best Picture winner is the hotbed issue of the award ceremony. When it happened, I kind of freaked out a little bit. I messaged Steven right away, and I think my message was, this is the new Crash moment, or something like that. Because this may be the worst Best Picture winner in some time. And I'm saying that in a broad spectrum, just like quickly looking at least in recent memory. I mean,
I would say, I mean, it just really depends on what. I mean, obviously, it really depends on how much you like the movie. I know you didn't like the movie that much. I mean, I like the movie. I do understand the criticisms of the film.
Right. I don't hate the movie like some do.
No.
But I don't think it's better than the other films it was.
No, there was at least
with.
3 other movies that were better than that movie.
Yeah, like
at least Black Klansman would have been my favorite over. Of course, Roma was our favorite. We wanted Roma to win. But once it won Best Foreign Film, I kind of started to think that it was not going to win both.
Yes, I kind of had that feeling as well. And they did something interesting during the ceremony is when they introduced each film before, they gave out the award, they brought out different presenters, some odd, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
Queen Latifah did The Favorite, I guess because, her name's Queen and the movie's about a queen.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, they brought out Mike Myers and Dana Carvey for Bohemian Rhapsody.
That was great.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
They didn't they bring out Serena Williams for
it was,
A Star Is Born?
Was it Serena? Yeah, it was Serena, yeah.
For A Star Is Born, I believe?
I think so, yeah.
And they brought out those 2 chefs for Roma, which was a little odd to me, but okay.
And then the one girl from The Hate You Give and that one guy, the politician, I think.
That was what I was going to say, John Lewis, who, for those of you who don't know who John Lewis is, he's a congressman from the state of Georgia, and he marched with Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights Movement. He was there when it happened.
His was
and
when
they brought
the
him
roughest
out,
of the
not
talks.
even roughest, but when I heard it, I'm like, oh, okay. Green Book's probably going to win.
Yeah.
Because you don't bring him out. You don't have someone like him present that movie and talk about its importance and its importance in commenting on racism at that time.
Well, the thing is,
like,
that,
okay,
but that could have been Black Klansman. I mean,
I thought he was going to do Black Klansman.
I mean, that's the thing is that being that it was for the Best Picture, he could have been talking about a few of them movies, honestly.
I thought it was going to be Black Klansman because I think Black Klansman is like a movie that's talking about racism in both, the time in which the movie is set and now. And there's still a fight happening there. And you have John Lewis, who was somebody who was literally around back then and literally around now, still fighting that fight.
Yeah.
And I was like, that makes sense. But instead, they went with Barbara Streisand to do Black Klansman. And I was like, interesting.
Which it was interesting, but it was kind of cool. They had that moment where Streisand was commenting about, stuff, and then you see Spike Lee having fun because he just won his Academy Award. He was like all high on the fact that he just won finally after all these years, that was the moment he was having fun, and it was great to see Spike Lee not sitting there just thinking about killing people. The whole,
wow.
which he always looks like. He looks like he's thinking about killing somebody.
Or being at the Knicks games, watching them lose like over and over again. This year.
But then at the end, he just completely
really, he did. But the reason why, I guess, I don't know why they chose her. Maybe because she did mention, like, what you were just referencing is that she's grew up in Brooklyn, and Spike Lee grew up in Brooklyn. They're both from that borough of New York, so that was kind of their tie.
Well, it kind of reminded me of if I don't know if you know this, but back when the year of Do the Right Thing came out, what's her name? The
1989.
Well, I know the year, but like the actress Kim Basinger, the year of that Oscars, she actually came out and said, like, there was one movie that didn't get nominated this year that should have been, and she said, "Do the right thing." She came out and actually said it in during the awards, like off script. Which
it
was
probably
pretty awesome.
should have been nominated, because that was the year Driving Miss Daisy won.
Which is the ironic, which has kind of been the running joke about this year, that Green Book is very similar in that sense of like somebody driving somebody else, that kind of driver. And Spike Lee even said, he's like, it's anytime there's a guy driving somebody, I lose.
it's a role reversal, a race,
it is
a racial reversal. In Driving Miss Daisy, it was an African American chauffeur driving an elderly woman, and they became friends. In Green Book, it's a white Italian American chauffeur and a African American. It's a white Italian American chauffeur and a black African American, person that is driving.
Homosexual.
Yes, homosexual as well, which is something they touched on a little bit in the movie, not really a lot. But Green Book winning, like I was saying, it's the crash moment for a lot of reasons. And the biggest reason for me is that it won over better competition.
Sure.
I mean, and what I said earlier was like, it's the worst Best Picture winner probably in some time. That's subjective, of course. That's my opinion. That's not everybody's.
I mean, if we're comparing Crash to Green Book, I take Green Book still.
Green Book's, I would say,
a better movie. It's I think Crash is just way more. It takes itself way too seriously, and I think it's a little bit over dramatic at points. And some of the acting in that movie is terrible. Like, I would say it's one of the worst Sandra Bullock movies. Like,
it's a coincidence. I mean, I was talking with you earlier that it's coincidentally also a movie that's trying to comment about racial prejudice, as well, whether it be racism against African Americans or racism against Hispanics or things like that. But coincidentally, Green Book is similar to that, where it's commenting on racism, but specifically racism during the civil rights movement in the South, the 60s in the South. There's so much to say about Green Book, but we've talked about it several times before, so we won't bemoan it, but that's the big surprise.
I mean, everybody could have their opinion, because there's other movies that have come out since Crash that I think were kind of like dopey winners. Like,
right.
Personally, I find The King's Speech to be a little bit dopey of a winner. Yeah. It's not a bad movie either, but it's also that like cliche Oscar movie to win every time.
And I know you're not a fan of The Artist, even though you said I
still haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I just think that it's funny that a movie that I have to see the movie.
You got to see it.
I got to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what a interesting ceremony. I think they're probably going to go hostless next year as well.
I was going to say, didn't the ratings go up this year?
The ratings actually surprisingly went up.
Yeah.
After all of this, after all the things that the Academy wanted to do and then didn't do because they got so much crap for it, the ratings still ended up going up. So basically, Academy, stop trying to do whatever it is you wanted to do, because none of it really worked, other than you getting the backlash, I guess.
Yeah, they keep trying to make something that's not for everybody.
Right.
They can't. It's not. You're not gonna. You can't make this for the whole generation. This new. Some people are going to be into the Oscars, and some people are not going to.
They're not going.
How it is.
I'll say.
And the thing is their ratings are so high.
Yeah.
They act like it's one of the highest watched things all year. But
it really is.
But they make a big deal about it.
Considering people typically don't sit down to watch television at a specific time anymore, you better be happy with what you get.
Yeah.
But the Oscars were also, I think, a surprising venue and surprising moments of diversity within the ceremony. Diversity that people have been, kicking the Oscars for not having for years now. Remember Oscars So White a few years ago, but we had some fantastic diversity moments. Black Panther won 3 Oscars.
Yeah, best costume, best production.
No, Black Panther won 2 or 3.
Best costume, best production, and then it won best score.
Best score as well. It was the first film in the MCU to win an Oscar.
Yep.
First one to win multiple Oscars.
Yeah.
And we had the great Ruthie Carter, who was the costume designer on the film, who did all of that great costume designing in the movie with the different, Wakandan cultures and all that kind of stuff. You had the great production design by, I can't remember her first name, but her last name is Beechler. And then you had Ludwig Göransson, who, he's actually a white guy, if you didn't get it by that name. But he's been working with Ryan Coogler since college. They went to college together. And he's done the score for both Creed movies. We talked about how much we love, Rocky and Creed and all that kind of stuff. So that one, Regina King won for If Beale Street Could Talk.
That was kind of a given. I think that was one of the most locked ones. Yeah.
She was fantastic. She had a great speech. Mahershala Ali won his second Oscar for, coincidentally, Green Book. I think he's the best part of that movie is Mahershala Ali's performance. And he won for that. And I really, really, an interesting ceremony, but that Best Picture winner, I think, is going to leave people scratching their heads.
The other thing is too is the one award that Green Book got that I won't understand is Best Original Screenplay.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
That I think The Favorite should have gotten that one.
Green Book doesn't have a fantastic screenplay.
No, it's pretty straightforward.
It's straightforward, and that's one of the things about that movie is that everything is so surface levelly. You know what I mean?
It is, and it isn't. I think the actors give a lot to the substance of the movie.
But the way it approaches its subject matter, we've discussed it before, is it doesn't go deep enough.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't always go
below the surface, and it hits those usual things we've seen in those types of movies.
It's fluff. It's fluff compared to other movies that deal with the same
this
subject.
This idea that if we were just friends, then racism would go away or something like that.
Sure.
Or the idea that this absurdly racist person would all of a sudden be good if he just got to know a specific black person or something. That stuff is such easy.
It's definitely fluff,
stuff.
but I think sometimes fluff is okay, and I think that sometimes we don't always want the deep and dark, serious versions of these stories because we get them all. We get them all the time. I feel like every year we do get the dark movies. And I think it's okay to have shine a different light on the subject matter and it not always be clouded in hate. This movie decides to cloud it in more light.
Yeah, the irony is that they gave out both screenplay awards back to back, and Green Book won first, and then Black Klansman won second, and it couldn't be two different versions of depicting racism than anything. It's kind of like you're playing both sides here by giving each one an award because you can't pick one. That's very interesting.
Me, I think Blind Spotting should have been in here in the awards this year. So Blind Spotting delved into the subject, I think, better than probably both of the movies. But
Barry Jenkins probably should have been nominated.
Probably, yeah.
I don't know. Was Peter Farrelly nominated for Best Director?
Yeah. No. He wasn't. He was out.
He wasn't?
Because it was McKay that got in that we think he shouldn't have been.
It should have been Barry Jenkins.
Should have been Barry Jenkins.
Over McKay. Easy.
Yeah.
Peter Farrelly, coincidentally, is from my home state of Rhode Island. Uh-huh. He set a lot of movies up here in Rhode Island. Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
There's Something About Mary. He actually went to the same college that I graduated from. He was the class of 79. I was the class of 2016.
I like some of his movies, but he had the most annoying speech stuff the whole night because he would read off them really long lists, and that was annoying.
Some people had that. Also, he didn't have the best speeches. He did thank, Rhode Island when he won the Oscar, and he said he was going to do it. And everybody up here, it's that thing where
sure, there's a sense of pride.
There's a sense of pride, but I'm part of me is like, oh, that's cool. The guy who went to the same college as me won an Oscar, but then I'm like, for that movie, okay, you know what I mean? I'm trepidatious about what he won his Oscar for. But that's just me personally. But
it's interesting. It's interesting to see. Just think, in general, McKay, basically a comedy director, and now it seems Peter Farrelly's getting into the drama game now.
Right,
and it's cool.
He typically was directing movies with his brother, and they were the Farrelly brothers. But okay, so we will transition now to
overall, I think I like the Oscars this year for the most part. In the sense of the show.
Yeah, but I guess before we transition, Steven's going to mention that.
Well, I was just going to say overall thought that, did you like the show?
I did like the show. I thought it was going to be a complete and utter mess, and it had the potential to be a complete and utter mess.
Yeah.
But it actually wasn't.
Yeah. I think it ended up being more entertaining than I thought it would be.
Right.
So yeah.
So now we can make our transition away from this and move into more cinema discovery type area.
Kind of, a little bit, yeah.
We'll get in our little machine. We'll punch in a few numbers, and we'll see where it takes us. I almost like to think of it as like one of those cars from the Jetsons, the things where you sit in and the glass thing comes over.
Yeah,
and you fly around.
Kind of like the Willy Wonka elevator, where it goes.
The
can fly.
The glass elevator.
Yeah.
I think that's like it's gonna break through the glass, and they think they're gonna die.
Is it gonna break? I don't know. Will we see? We'll see.
We'll find out. We'll find out. But we're gonna talk about something that was an idea that I had, and I brought it up to Steve, and he said, "Yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's talk about it." And this idea of movies that have gone on to be adapted into TV shows.
Yeah.
Because I think that both the film world and the TV world have been kind of, bouncing back and forth with each other now for several decades. TV, of course, has been in people's homes pretty much since the 1950s and the 1960s. It initially was pretty much made to challenge, the theatrical experience, as Steven Spielberg likes to call it. And initially it did. We talked about in our episode before of, the way Hollywood has tried to, come up with different ways to entice people to go to the movies. Initially, widescreen was instituted, Panavision, CinemaScope, all that kind of stuff was instituted to combat the popularity of TVs in people's homes. Why would people leave their house if they could stay home? Coincidentally, we're still having that same argument now.
Yeah, I know, right?
With streaming. So I thought, hey, that's an interesting idea because TV shows and movies couldn't be more different when it comes to several different aspects. TV and movies have been divided for so long in so many different ways that I think the lines are blurring now more than ever. And I thought it would be interesting for Stephen and I to discuss those things. Yeah. I brought it up to Stephen that there was a time where I think most actors would either call themselves, movie actors or TV actors. Being actors and actresses. And you couldn't cross the two. Like, if you were if you were a movie actor, doing TV was seen as kind of a step down in your career.
And I think a lot of that was because of the amount of, the money that could be put into movies versus TV. If somebody would look at TV, because budgets were usually a lot smaller, that was
Very
lesser.
Small.
Yeah. There was a lot lesser, and you wouldn't be able to do as much.
Yeah, if you look at some of the old television series that are probably playing now on TV Land or, back growing up in the 90s, Nick at Night. What's kind of odd now is a lot of the TV shows we were watching that were on, main network television are now on TV Land.
Yeah.
A lot of sitcoms. And it's very interesting going back and looking at all those shows, and you see they are, of course, really relatively low budgeted compared to things they can do now. And, of course, that has to do with, when these things were made, what they had access to when it came to technology and things like that. Yeah. And I've always mentioned that, CGI wasn't really a thing until the late 1970s and into the 80s. So everything before that, you had to build sets for. Those old Star Trek episodes, they look like they were shot in a soundstage because they were shot on a soundstage with sets that weren't too elaborate or anything like that. And it's very interesting where you see that there was a huge divide between what movies look like and what TV shows look like, and now the lines are blurring so much. You have large budgeted television series that are getting made now more than ever before. Game of Thrones, which is ending its run relatively soon, is a massive, large production show where it's like a movie type production show. They're spending, over $100 million a year on a season on 10 episodes. Mm-hmm. So it's it's really a large amount, and they're filming also all over the world on location in places like Iceland and Malta and some islands in off the coast of Scotland or wherever. They're just so many exotic locations, and those things are starting to become more commonplace. There's going to be a Lord of the Rings television series that's coming that they're making right now. Huge budget, on that show, from what I've heard. From what I've heard, just from acquiring the rights from the Tolkien family and putting the show into production, Amazon's going to be spending like probably $500 million on this show. It's going to be bananas how much money they're spending for this.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
Lord of the Rings was, big budgeted epic movie trilogy.
Oh yeah, and a lot of, I think, what has changed, especially for actors, is that the formatting of shows has changed dramatically to where shows are not going for 22 episode seasons anymore. Because of streaming, and even some premium channels, networks like HBO, they go for the no more than 12 episodes usually. Usually sometimes 8 is kind of been becoming the standard now, and that is more alluring to movie actors because they don't have to spend, usually it's a limited series, something like recently that Sharp Objects limited series with, Amy Adams, big movie star. She has to come in, do, 8 hours of something, and then she's done, and it gives her a different audience to look at her, people
true.
that are not as going to the theaters, watching movies as much can now see her on HBO doing this show for 8 hours, and it brings it broadens her appeal for them to then go see her movies.
Also, a lot of material now is better with the long form of television than it is for the short form of movies. There were like you just brought up Sharp Objects. That's a book, so it's easier to adapt. Not easier, but it's better to adapt that into, an 8-episode miniseries than it is, a 2-hour movie. And having to squish all that down, all that material
for
down.
actors, it's alluring because they can spend more time with their characters. They can do a lot more and delve in a lot deeper with their characters. So that's something that, that's always appealing for them too. So.
And when it comes to book series, popular book series, specifically fantasy book series and comic books now are gigantic, and there are so many comic book television series that are cropping up that probably 10, 20 years ago would only be looked at into adapting into a movie form than they would be into adapting into a television series. And that's why you get kind of a lot of those early comic book movies don't look so favorably now because we've gotten kind of better versions of them on television. For example, The Punisher. We got one with Dolph Lundgren, we got one with Tom Jane, and then Ray Stevenson. And now we've got a television series of The Punisher that works a lot better because comic books are a long form of storytelling, so they translate better into television than they do into movies. And it's not like you can't make movies out of them because they have, but now they've done, TV shows. Daredevil was another one. They made a Daredevil movie. Now they made a Daredevil TV series. So comic books are kind of transitioning into that now. And the studios that are behind or own these properties can still make money off of them. Yeah. Maybe not the hundreds of millions of dollars they would make at the box office, but still they're able to give the audience what they want, but also able to profit off of them in a specific way. And it's interesting that you bring up actors and actresses because a lot of prominent actors and actresses have worked on television or have gotten their start on television. Someone like Tom Hanks worked on a sitcom in the 80s, Bosom Buddies, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was in that. And then, of course, he went on to do, comedies.
Yeah, it's a lot more traditional. It used to be a lot more traditional that you could build your career in TV and then move into movie acting. And now it's can kind of be, like you said, it's kind of leveled now.
Yeah. It was almost like kind of not taboo, but I would say, you usually TV actors didn't go from TV to movies and then become superstars. You know what I mean? They could do both, but they wouldn't really become superstars. And
also, there might have been a little bit of an animosity between studios too. I mean, depending on which. I mean, I know a lot of the big movie studios owned some of these obviously networks too for shows, but they don't want them to go. They don't want their big actors to go do TV because even for them, they would think that might hurt their their
brand.
image. You know,
it could hurt their brand.
Yeah.
Now that's not really the case.
It's not the case. It's like we want your eyes, as many people on you as possible.
We do. Someone like just other prominent actors coming off the top of my head. Denzel Washington started out doing television.
We also did stage work, so he knows about, you know.
Yes. George Clooney.
Long form,
George Clooney was on ER. People remember that. There are
more recently. You've had like Ewan McGregor did Fargo. You know.
Well, that's coming. Yeah, that's going from someone who was predominantly on.
Yeah.
In the movie realm to come down and do television. Julia Roberts just did a television series. Well, she did an Amazon series. And so that was kind of a first
Nicole
for her.
Kidman and Meryl Streep are on that one show right now, right?
Oh, yes. Big Little Lies. Yeah. And Meryl Streep was actually someone who I didn't think. I was like, Meryl Streep, she didn't do television. And then I went and looked at her filmography, and yes, she did. She was in several miniseries. Yeah. She was in Angels in America, which is that miniseries that was a play that got adapted to a miniseries on HBO. She was in that, and she was in some other stuff as well. But someone like Helen Mirren, I knew was on television in the UK.
Bruce Willis start out on TV too?
Yes, he did. What's that show? Moonlighting or something?
Yeah, Moonlighting.
Like that?
I think that's what it was.
That's where he started as like a TV actor, and then when he got cast for Die Hard, people didn't think he would, do well because he's on
at the time it was the muscly dudes that were the action stars, the really muscular.
Well, yeah, Arnold and
Stallone, and yeah.
Who I don't think either of them has coincidentally done television.
Unless you count his porn.
Arnold has always been larger than life.
Yeah,
so I guess that's why
he was too big for TV. Yeah,
literally, I guess.
Literally too big for TV. They couldn't fit him on the screen.
Recently, Anthony Hopkins has done television with Westworld. Jeffrey Wright is an actor who does both. I think he's always really done both.
James Franco did stuff on General Hospital.
Yeah, well, he was also in Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah, he was on. He started out on TV. Yeah,
look at that cast: Freaks and Geeks, Seth Rogen,
Jason Segel.
Jason Segel,
Danny McBride.
He wasn't.
No, he was. I'm sorry, Seth Rogen's who I meant.
Seth Rogen.
Yeah, Seth Rogen.
But
Danny McBride's as one too. I mean, Eastbound.
Well, he
Down.
did Eastbound and Down.
Yeah.
That's kind of where he got his exposure from. But you have someone, Linda Cardellini, who was kind of the lead of Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah.
She was just in Green Book, coincidentally.
She still can't get freaking better. She needs better roles.
Well, she's
too good.
She's actually a great actress who doesn't get great roles. She was in Avengers: Age of Ultron as Hawkeye's wife.
Oh wow, that's a huge role for her.
Yeah, she had nothing to do, but yes. Sam Levine was in that show as well.
Yeah.
One of your this is a kind of a cross for you, Stephen. Bussy Phillips, who was in that show, was in Dawson's Creek.
Dawson's Creek.
The later seasons of Dawson's Creek. She played
yes. James Vanderbeek, if only his career could have taken off.
I'll tell you, the beak of his career may not have taken off, but he looks fantastic. He hasn't aged really at all since
Joshua Jackson had a little bit of a career. I mean, Katie Holmes still pops up in something.
Yeah, Joshua Jackson, though, he started out in The Mighty Ducks, so he started out in movies.
Yeah, he started out in movies, went to TV, and has kind of done a few hit shows,
He does Broadway, I think, as well. He's a Broadway actor as well.
Cool.
Katie Holmes' career, kind of, but
she keeps trying to do something, and nobody, likes her, I guess. I don't know. I mean, they literally replaced her.
She was in Batman Begins. We're getting off on a Dawson's Creek tangent.
I know, right? Sorry.
We can't go down to that.
That's a rabbit hole that we will do a whole series of episodes on one day. No,
I know. Where's the
That's
Dawson's
TV.
Creek?
We don't need to talk about that.
That's
Cinema
TV.
Discovery Project.
I know. Let's shift away from that, because I also want to mention that we have movies that were adapted into TV shows, but we also have something that I think is fascinating and interesting, and something that I think is happening a lot more now, or hopefully does. And that is, you're taking the TV show material and you're creating sequels and prequels in the form of television series, which are fascinating to me, because that's how we can continue on some of the movies that we really, really like, but I guess maybe weren't as popular enough to make another sequel or make a third film or whatever. Or, so we're able to continue on the stories via that, and there've been a lot of them, more than I actually ever thought there were. If there is a whole list of them, and some of them we know, and some of them I have never heard of. I think one that's prominent and one that speaks to both Steven and I is Ash vs. Evil Dead,
yes.
which was recently abruptly canceled, cruelly, because it was going to continue on and be awesome. But people remember from the Sam Raimi Evil Dead series of movies, where, you know, we did get a trilogy of films, and we didn't really get anything for, what, like 30, not 30 years, like 19...
About 25 years
25 years or
something
so.
like that.
And then we get Ash vs. Evil Dead, and what was really cool about that, which doesn't really happen a lot, is you get your lead actor back who was actually from the movies. Yeah. Sometimes that doesn't happen because the actor or actress has either moved on, or they don't want to come back, or sometimes, unfortunately, they pass away, so you can't have them back, you know, because they're not with us anymore. But you've gotten so many different ones.
There's also more recently Bates Motel.
Yes, I was going to mention Bates Motel, which is weird to me because it's technically a prequel series. We have a young Norman Bates with Norma Bates, portrayed by Freddie Highmore and Vera Farmiga. A lot of stuff, weird stuff going on in there, but it's a prequel series because, you know, it's a young Norman Bates, but it's also set in modern times, so it's not really a prequel, but it is, and
it's like isn't. A spiritual prequel.
Yeah, it's really, really weird. I think that's actually fascinating.
It's a readaptation prequel.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what Norman, like a young Norman Bates, would be like, you know, in our modern teenage school setting. You could have made it
a period piece, but it would have probably upped the budget, you know, to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
And they had certain period piece touches to it, like Norma Bates drove like a VW Beetle bug.
It's like the movie was out of time a little bit. Like it didn't matter what time it was in.
Yeah, I mean, that does make a lot of sense. And something that I actually forget, and I think a lot of people don't know this, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer is technically a sequel series to the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie that happened in the early 1990s.
Then didn't it get a spin-off show?
Angel, which I really love. And there's also been others, like I said, that I wasn't aware of. For example, Stephen, were you aware that there was not one but two, you know, live-action sequel series? They weren't sequel; they were actually prequel series to Casablanca.
What?
One in 1955 and one in 1983.
No.
And apparently they were events that took place before the film. So, like,
dude, what? Now we have to buy them and watch.
Yeah, is that available on DVD? Who really knows? Who really knows?
Yeah, I know. Right?
I remember growing up, there was a Back to the Future animated series that is now fortunately just become available on DVD. And it basically take place after the events of Back to the Future Part 3, where it's basically Christopher Lloyd and his wife, who's portrayed by Mary Steenburgen in the movie, you know, where it's them raising their, like, 3 kids, who you see at the end of, you know, Back to the Future 3. There was a lot of animated, like, sequel and prequel series that are popping up on this list I'm looking at. For example, the Beetlejuice animated series, which is actually how I was introduced into Beetlejuice, was through the animated series. I think is a sequel series or something like that.
I remember, kind of, basically.
Lydia was the main character in it. That's why the movie, when I watched the movie for the first time as a kid, it confused me because in the animated series, Beetlejuice isn't a bad guy. He just kind of like Lydia's wacky friend who takes her on crazy adventures. But in the movie, he's the villain.
Yeah,
it really kind of, you know, threw me for a loop. For another series, From Dusk Till Dawn was a movie. Robert Rodriguez's movie was turned into a series. Highlander, one of my favorite kind of guilty pleasures, was turned into a TV series.
They did one for Zombieland recently.
They did. We talked about it.
It didn't last at all.
And the pilot was just so not good that it didn't get picked up. It just didn't get picked up. And that was one where they had to recast everybody, and it just didn't work. Also, sometimes that doesn't work.
Also, a series of unfortunate events is kind of a readaptation / You know,
it is. Yeah, it is a readaptation of the movie with Jim Carrey.
But then they continue the story.
Yeah,
further.
They adapt. They're pretty much adapting like every single storyline from the books into the TV series. Man, there are just so many here. Like,
what about one
Kids?
of your shows, Legion, is a spin-off show within the X-Men universe, right?
It kind of is. Yeah, because it does deal with mutants, so you could say it is, and I'm pretty sure there's reference to like Professor X and stuff like that, because Legion, the character of Legion, is Professor X's son. Yeah. So, spoiler there if you weren't hopped up on it. Oh man, I don't know if you watched this when you were a kid, but I watched it. There was an Aladdin animated series.
Yeah.
That was set between The Return of Jafar and the third movie.
Yeah.
And I watched that as a kid. There was an All Dogs Go to Heaven animated series that took place after the events of All Dogs Go to Heaven.
They've done a lot of they did an Ace Ventura animated series.
They did. Where's our complete series box set of that? Damn it! Oh, come on now. There was, of course.
Didn't they do a Mask also?
Yes, there was a Mask animated series. There was a Men in Black animated series.
Yeah.
Minority Report apparently had a live action series. I remember that. That was a few years ago. It kind of crashed and burned after like its first season. Like, it didn't last past one season. But there's another Steven Spielberg connection right there. There was a Mummy animated series. Man,
they also
they did
never mind. They didn't
Napoleon
do a show
Dynamite. They did a Clerks animated series. The Pink Panther series that I grew up with was actually an adaptation, or it was kind of like a sequel series to the Pink Panther movies. I mean, it had the same characters in it.
Now you got
follow a story.
Get Smart was that's the other way around. It was
I think it was the other way around.
It was a show and then it was a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. There was a Spaceballs. There was Spaceballs. Stargate was actually, remember that movie with the Roland Emmerich movie was turned into Stargate SG-1, which then had like a spin-off of Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Universe. Man, they kind of really milked that franchise forever.
So getting to like, I mean, we could go on forever.
Yeah,
there's so many big ones.
I mean, there's Terminator, there's Tron.
Yeah.
There was a Training Day series. There's a Lethal Weapon series that I think is still on the air.
I
mean, they did a Rush Hour series which lasted one season.
Yeah.
But all of those kind of like adaptations, and but one thing I do want to mention, and I have to mention it because it's my favorite TV series of all time, and that is Friday Night Lights, which was a movie based on a book that turned into a TV series. Is my favorite show of all time. But there's a lot of them here, like, and they go back decades. This isn't a recent phenomenon. They go back, like I was saying about the Casablanca one, which was like in the 50s. I mean, it's
just one of them things. I mean,
it's overwhelming how much are here.
It is. I mean, I think just because of this has kind of become the golden age of TV.
Yes.
That it's just ramped up even more.
That's another thing that has happened, is that a lot of these series that I've mentioned, a lot of them from the past, weren't even during a time where television is as prominent as it is now.
Yeah.
Like, now is the time where things are really kicking into high gear.
What's funny is I think there's probably even examples of stuff that started out as TV shows, and then they made a successful movie, and now they're remaking the TV show. There's probably even some examples of that. Like, I could see them one day redoing the Mission Impossible show. Like, because it's obviously a successful franchise of movies now, but it started out as a TV show. Yeah. And then I could see them coming back to it and like being like, example, Twilight Zone is coming back as a show.
What's crazy? You mentioned that there was the Twilight Zone series.
Yeah. Then
it was Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah.
Twilight Zone series. There was actually another series. Twilight Zone's been done a bunch of times.
Yeah.
There was a series, the original series. There was the movie, and then there was another series in the early 2000s that they did, and now there's a new series again.
Yeah.
It's really, really.
It's all about. It's what it comes back to is the IP. If they think that they can use that brand, that name to sell something, they're going to try it again.
Well, think about it. What are the two biggest sci-fi franchises of all time? Star Trek and Star Wars.
Yeah.
And they're both playing in both realms prominently right now.
Well, Star Wars is about to get bigger. So.
Star Wars is just really starting to get into that realm, and it's probably going to blow the doors off.
Probably.
Even more so because people haven't seen a live-action Star Wars series ever. Yeah, I'm trying to think of, was there anything?
You don't count the Christmas special?
Christ, no. No, I can't say I do. But I'm thinking of, there was an animated series of droids, and then there was those 2 TV movies, the Ewok movies. Weren't those TV movies?
I think so.
We don't have to remember. Anywho, that's neither here nor there. But I'm just saying, Star Wars is getting into the live action game.
Yeah.
Star Wars has been in the animated series game for a while now. And Star Trek, as we all know, started out as a TV series, was a series of movies, then it had a bunch of other TV series, had more movies when it came to the Next Generation movies, then had the J.J. Abrams movies, as well as other series in there. Now it's got another series, and now they're trying to do another Star Trek movie, but who really knows? So that's something where we get into these big franchises that are multimedia franchises, where they're trying to make as much content as they can in both the movies and the TV realm, and that's where there's cross-pollination between the two, because I think you're getting a lot of people who are working on the movies then are also working on the television series as well. It's not necessarily the actors though, because I don't know how that's going to work. If that ever does work, we are getting a Cassian Andor TV series, and he was an actor and a character in the movies. Yeah. So we're getting his series. The MCU is starting to do that now, where they're trying to launch live action series based on characters from their movies. Loki, there's gonna be a Loki series, as well as Falcon. I think isn't Loki and Falcon, and then
Scarlet
Witch and Vision are getting a series, and so you're seeing where movies are starting to branch out.
It's almost like TV is becoming almost the great sidekick to movies, where you can really expound on your movie characters by using TV as a conduit to do that.
Very much so.
It's very much complementary.
It's also they've done everything they can when it comes to movies.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? Oh, we have television, and not only do we have television, it's not like television back in the day.
In a way, television's become almost like the way you release movies, where you release it all at once. You don't do week by week as much anymore, unless. But not only that,
but I mean, kind of bringing the podcast here full circle to a certain extent. Streaming is making all of these things possible now. Yeah. Since this avenue of streaming and digital media is opening up and is keeping opening up to the masses, and people are actually gravitating towards it, now is when you're starting to get a lot of the movies, stuff from the movies being adapted into TV shows, because they don't have to go through this old sense of things where, okay, you have to be this amount of episodes, you have to have this amount of budget.
Yeah.
You're going to be, you can only sell it to this amount of networks, or you're screwed. And now there's a lot more avenues, and the streaming has kind of opened that up. So that's another benefit to streaming, is we're getting more of what we like, if you do like those things. Now, unfortunately, that could lead to probably negative things. Perhaps, I hate to use this term, but a bastardization of the things you like. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. We're already getting it with Star Wars a little bit.
There's I mean, there is
an oversaturation of stuff.
Not only that, but there's a difference between movie quality and TV show quality. I know I mentioned how closer it's getting, but you can still tell what's a TV show versus what's a movie. I mean, there's an obviously different aesthetic to both. So for some people who are used to seeing something in just one way, the movie way, maybe they'll be disappointed with the way it looks on television.
Might not be translated as well.
It won't be translated as well, but you kind of have to realize that there are two different mediums. There's certain things you can do with one that you can't do with the other, and vice versa.
The storytelling is definitely different.
The storytelling is where you can make up that ground.
Yeah.
Is with that long form storytelling, you can make it just as good, or if not better, than what a movie could do.
Sure. And it just takes, hopefully good writers are behind the things that that's where it's key with TV. TV is all about the writers. That's the key.
the writers, the showrunners, the producers, those people are
they're the heart of TV.
It's very
honestly.
interesting how in TV production, the directors aren't really that important to a certain extent.
Or they are, but they're not as noticed. You don't hear about the directors of TV.
It all depends on what it is. If it's a short form miniseries or anthology series like a True Detective, then I think the director is more prominent. But if you have a long form series that's like 22, 23 episodes a series, that thing is such a well-oiled machine that the director almost doesn't really do much. For example, I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith, and Kevin Smith has worked on several of the CW DC superhero shows, Supergirl, Flash, that he basically has said, like, these things are such well-oiled machines that I kind of, just stand there and say action.
Yeah,
like, there was one time he was telling a story.
You just figure out the shot you want and they get it done for you.
Yeah, it's like the people working with you know the show much better than you do.
Yeah.
So they do all the heavy work, and you're just kind of there.
You just have some creative influence. You're a cheerleader.
You basically, you don't have that much creative influence because you can't go in there and like change everything.
Sure.
You can't make it look completely different than the other 10 episodes before it. So he had stories where he's like, so one time I just let them do their thing and I went out and I just bought like burgers and fries for everybody there because like they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing instead of me.
It's a good paycheck for him, man. I mean, but yeah, I mean, we could go on forever about this, man. There's a lot of interesting things that is happening with the trend, between TV and film, and I'm interested to see what else they decide to maybe adapt one day, and it's a lot of movies that there's maybe even some movies that maybe weren't that great that might do better as TV series, and maybe there's probably examples of that too that would be great,
everybody keeps bringing up. Something like a Flash Gordon TV series would be pretty cool.
Might be pretty cool. Now that we got the technology, you could probably handle that.
Now that it's not like the 80s and you're limited by that. I mean, I know there were like serial versions of Flash Gordon and things like that back in the day. I don't know why I bring up Flash Gordon. I think just because it's a sci-fi thing that with better technology and storytelling.
A good example is maybe the new Avatar: Last Airbender that they're doing for Netflix. Was a terrible film. Terrible film, but they're about to do it again live action on Netflix. So hopefully that'll be
better.
Cool. Hopefully be better.
I mean, there are other media that you can use that you can bypass television and bring to the television form. Video games specifically, I think, are a big one. But that's a whole different discussion for a different time.
Yeah, but closing this out, I think that there's a lot of even further discussions we could have, another day about
there's
this.
Like the list goes on and on in terms of different shows you can discuss.
But there's some cool crossover there, and it's going to keep getting bigger and bigger as the streaming services get more bloated, and we'll see a lot more of this stuff. I think.
I think we will. It's already overwhelming now, and it's just expanding.
Yeah, but that's going to end our episode this week. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings, or you can find the audio for this podcast on YouTube, also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Podbean, and that will be it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.